Welcome back to Launch Control, the show where we talk about how cars work. Brad just did a video on the worst new cars of 2023, not our opinion, the opinion of Consumer Reports, and he gave us a list of cars that we should probably avoid. Today, I'm going to dive in a bit deeper and explain why. Let's get into it.
Hey, this is your shot at 100 free entries. Yes, free entries into our very first giveaway. This 700 horsepower Bayside Blue GTR plus a good old $10,000 cash. Click below to claim your free entries right now. And you want even better odds? Well, grab a digital entry pack and unlock the biggest multiplier for the most chances to win. Don't wait, entries close soon. Good skill, and hopefully I'm tossing the keys to this GTR to you.
We can break the biggest problems on new cars into three basic categories: build quality, infotainment, and the CVT transmission. Let's start with the first one.
Build quality, build quality, build quality.
Build quality. Thing is, build quality can be sort of subjective. For some, it's panel gaps and paintwork. For others, it's squeaks and rattles and whether or not the door panel feels like it's gonna come off in your hand every time you get in. Build quality is sort of a catch-all statement for a car's fit, finish, materials, and overall engineering and assembly characteristics. And the hard truth is that some car makers simply do a better job than others. And the two worst offenders on this list are the Tesla Model Y and the Alfa Romeo Giulia. See, building a production car for the road to be used every day is really hard. It has to do everything well. And that all starts with the engineers and designers, but it falls on the production plant to get it done en masse. And when you're building an all-new car in an all-new plant and using all-new construction techniques, things can get a little messy. Tesla is still a pretty new car company that was genuinely started from scratch. But frankly, there's still no excuse for panels that don't line up, trim that falls off, or cars getting delivered straight up missing parts. And that's true of a car at any price, let alone one at Tesla money. Alfa, on the other hand, doesn't really have an excuse either. Sure, it's an Italian company that builds quirky, charismatic Italian cars, but it's not the little mom and pop shop it once was. Alfa is under the ownership of Stellantis, which, if you didn't know, is a multinational automotive conglomerate with several successful brands all under one roof. They have access to all of the resources of all these other car makers, and so there really isn't a good reason I can come up with that Alfa Romeo, Stellantis' luxury brand aimed squarely at BMW, which is a tiny company in comparison, isn't building cars that are screwed together half as well. On paper, continuously variable transmissions make a lot of sense. See, combustion engines have a pretty small window of peak efficiency, where you're making the maximum power with the least amount of fuel possible. So instead of transmitting rotational energy through a series of fixed gear ratios to try and keep the engine hovering around that sweet spot as often as possible, we can use the CVT to put the engine RPM exactly where we want it for a given condition and load. Imagine two variable-sized pulleys with a belt or chain that runs between them. When one pulley gets bigger, the other one gets smaller, causing the belt or chain to move up or down on the pulleys. This changes their ratio, which in turn changes the gear ratio of the transmission, in theory, allowing for the ideal mix of performance and efficiency. If they hadn't banned CVT transmissions in Formula 1 in the 90s, we would have had way more awesome CVTs by now. But they were actually too good in F1, so they banned them. Same is true for a lot of awesome car technology we take for granted today, like traction control, ABS, and active suspension, future launch control on the trickle-down F1 tech in daily driver cars. That being said, there are a few cars, especially some hybrids, that do a pretty good job of it. On the other hand, there are several cars where the CVT transmission is the single biggest pain point of ownership. CVT. Take the new WRX for instance. The styling is what it is, but its biggest turnoff for me is the CVT. And of course, you can say, well, just get the manual then, which, yes, and you should. But for a big majority of the population, an automatic is what fits the bill. In fact, just 1.7% of new cars sold this year are gonna be sticks. Honda's automatic transmission has never been the best, and the CVT version found in the HR-V is no exception. It's not so bad in the WRX, it just doesn't really fit the attitude of the car, but it's not great in its chunky brother, the Ascent. And the one in the Sentra? In fact, the one in pretty much every Nissan ever is downright awful. They're unreliable, noisy, and completely uninspiring to drive. They wear out quicker than pretty much any other gearbox, and they're not cheap to replace. I promise not all CVTs are awful though. I mean, check out the Regera. Modern infotainment systems are, surprise, the best they've ever been. A touchscreen that controls nearly everything is basically standard equipment even on a cheap car these days. But how is it possible that some manufacturers get it so wrong, especially on higher end luxury models? Well, the answer is actually a lot simpler than you might think, and like most things, it all comes down to money. The whole trend really started taking off as technology progressed to the point where it was cheaper to slap a cheap touchscreen computer in the dash as the primary user interface than it was to engineer bespoke switches and gauges and panels. I mean, sure, you get some benefits, like being able to read your text messages and get notified on the latest Ideal Media video, and of course, it's marketed as a must-have feature that you absolutely need, unless you aren't keeping up with the Joneses. But at the end of the day, the systems aren't for us, they're for them. They can be executed well. The system in most current BMWs, for instance, is excellent, with a good blend of buttons, switches, and screens. But in cars like
Tiguan, XC90, GLE SUV,
they're honestly not great. To be clear, the user interface experience is subjective. Some people really like having their heated seats or windshield wipers hidden in a menu. But the major problem is reliability and responsiveness. These systems need to be ultra reliable and should feel intuitive to use. There's really not a great reason that the $2,000 module in a Volvo isn't as quick or reliable as a $200 iPad.
Okay, Google, turn on the air conditioning.
They're just cheap hardware with bargain basement internals, running more often than not badly written software. Everything from your phone taking a full minute to connect via Bluetooth, to your reverse camera not turning on until you're done backing up, to the system locking up, crashing, and sometimes not even recovering at all. A bad infotainment system can single-handedly ruin the new car experience, and it's not like it's an affordable or simple thing to upgrade in the future. Sure, you can get software updates, but that doesn't help if the internal hardware just simply isn't powerful enough. This is a tough one. Ride quality is one of the hardest things for an automaker to nail, and it takes thousands of hours of development and testing to find the perfect compromise of an engaging driving experience that doesn't knock your fillings out over rough roads. And even then, it's not a one-size-fits-all situation. Roads in the UK, for example, are pretty awful in places, but tune a car to ride well there, and it usually results in something that feels too soft on something like the Autobahn. See, suspension tuning is really hard. You're constantly fighting the battle of geometry, spring rate, and compression and rebound characteristics. We'll do a whole video on all that coming along really soon. Very few cars have mastered the sort of Goldilocks suspension trick, and they're almost all very expensive and typically high-end. Think Mercedes S-Class, BMW 7 Series, Audi A8, certain Cadillacs, and of course, most models from Bentley and Rolls-Royce. That being said, there's no excuse for a modern car to ride like especially the ones that aren't meant to carry really heavy loads. But even then, go drive a Ram 1500. They ride great, and they don't compromise carrying capacity to do it. So, the Jeep Wrangler, Honda HR-V, and even more so the XC90 have no excuse for how they behave on even slightly rough roads. So there we have it, guys. Brad gave us a list of worst new cars to buy in 2023, and I'm following up with just a little bit more about why. If you like learning about how cars work, go check out the Launch Control series right over here, or go watch whatever YouTube thinks is best over here. My name's Trav, this is Ideal, and we'll see you all next time here on Launch Control.